Hey, hello to all, and welcome to a new show from Believe in Yourself, Believe in Your Business. I have Keith Sensor once again with me. Thank you, Keith, for accepting this invitation. I know that you are in a very amazing journey of helping teenagers and helping parents also to know how to manage and work with them and being together. So, how are you? How are the things that you are going through right now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. Things are good. It's nice to see things going back to normal to some degree. Kids getting back to school, away from the computer. So I think that's definitely helped with just overall mental health, right, in this country, and with how kids are starting to kind of have some semblance of normal in their lives. So that's a good thing. Um, and really, a lot of what I've been doing is just my non for profit, really trying to get our programs out there. They're all free, and getting the word out, teaching these life skills that these kids can use, which are going to just help them become better, more empathetic, caring, kind, loving, and successful adults.
And because we always start with this part of believing yourself, believing your business, and understanding where are you coming from. So, Keith, can you help us to? Of course, we're not going to go back to your story, but maybe to start to understand some of the things that you, or maybe some of the examples that you were with your kids or the people that even your kids or the ones that you are working with that can start to understand why you are talking about these labels don't define us and how that is affecting right now to kids, teenagers, and the way we are talking with them, because sometimes it's because we see them like, okay, they don't want to talk with me, they are just in their own world and they don't want to listen to me. So how that works with you, and what are the things that you have learned from that?
Sure, sure. So, for me, I mean, I think we live in very different times, right? When I was growing up, ADHD wasn't a thing, right? All these labels. I mean, a lot of kids, we had these particular disabilities or labels, right? But it wasn't spoken about. It wasn't so. There was so much research on it, right? So, I struggled. I definitely got bullied. I struggled with focus. I struggled with doing well in school. All the typical things with a kid who's just not, doesn't have the same skill set or the same kid that doesn't have ADHD, that doesn't have the hyperactivity piece, the inattentive piece, is going to be able to focus a lot easier than somebody that does, right? So, but there was no studies around this. There wasn't a lot of um, things to do for it, right? Like you would just either you were the bad kid or you were just a kid that couldn't sit still, right? So unfortunately, sometimes that came with a stigma, right? And teens, we don't when you're in middle school, even beginning of high school, we're not trained to understand what that other person's behavior might be triggered by something, right? We just think that person's acting like a clown or being silly or just can't control themselves. So there was definitely a lot more of a self-worth issues, right? Feeling comfortable in my own skin, being confident, right? Because I was always comparing myself to other people. So I grew up with that. It took me to like my 20s to really kind of find myself and realize none of this matters, right? But that journey was something I had to do on my own because there wasn't a lot out there to help me realize that I had ADHD, right? I didn't really find that out until my 30s. So by the time I found it out, I was like, oh, I've been dealing with this for 20 years already, right? So
It doesn't matter.
but the whole point with me with labels is, and I'm really happy now that they've come up with this term now, neurodivergent. I don't know if you've heard that, but which kind of it's basically kids that learn differently, that think differently, right? So instead of this one has autism and this one has ADHD and this one has uh, ADD or oppositional defiance disorder. Like instead of all these labels, they're just kids that learn differently. They've kind of put them under this neurodivergent umbrella, which I actually prefer that term because it's not so much a label as it's who we are. It's how we learn, right? So for me, to answer your question, like my son has ADHD, right? And I knew growing up what it was like to feel different, to not be like everybody else, to trouble fitting in, right? Everything I see about him, I'm like, up, that was me, up, that was me, up, that was me, right? So I knew that, right? and I did not want him to have the same experience I had, right? And the difference too is like my parents didn't know a lot about this, right? Most parents in my generation, our parents didn't really know, so they just they didn't know what to do. It's like, this is my kid. This is how I have to do the best we can to raise him. I think I'm much more aware. So
Quick question on
yeah,
that, Keith. And I know that this is only from your personal experience and what you have seen, and I am giving that disclosure claimer because sometimes people can say like, because you think like this, you are telling everybody that not to do that. But in your experience, what happens when a kid has an ADHD? Right now, I know that there is a lot of people that is saying when they have that, there is a lot of medication that you can give them. There is a lot of pills that you can give them. But according to your experience, what is better to? Of course, you are not a doctor, but I am talking from that
yeah.
experience, from being yourself and even having a kid that has that. What is the best way to manage that? It's through meds or is through understanding and working? What is better?
Well, I mean, I definitely think it's a combination of both, but you know, not everybody is going to be okay with medication, and that's okay. There's other ways to, it might be more challenging per se, right? Because the medication, at least in my case, my son's been medicated since he's 5 years old. You know, as a matter of fact, he called me last week. He's 21 now, and he said to me, he actually ran out of medication but forgot to tell me. And he's like, but I haven't taken it in a week and I've been able to focus and I've been okay. So I think sometimes they outgrow it, right? Like they need it for a certain point. I know adults that are on it right now that can't function without it, right? But I actually work with some kids that have really bad ADHD and are not medicated, and it's more setting strategies. There's other things you can do to manage it. So I think I that comes down to comfort level with the person, with the parents, right, and the child. But also I think it's such a spectrum on how severe your ADHD is, right? Or if it's just ADD and it doesn't have the hyperactive component. So that's a hard question to answer because I'm, like you said, I'm
No,
not.
I know. That's why I was telling I don't want you to answer like a doctor, and I
Yeah,
know that every case is completely different, but I wanted to know a little bit of your experience of that. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with another person that it seems that at least in his case was completely they were giving to his kid medication, but that led to other type of problems because of that. He started to like starting to do other drugs, and suddenly he became a drug addict. So those are like type of things that can happen when you have this. That's why I was asking you, but
yeah.
I am not trying to put you in a trap. Like,
No, no. Well, it's interesting you said that about drugs, right? I've actually seen the opposite. I've seen a lot of kids that have ADHD that are not medicated. They learn to self medicate, by smoking weed or whatever, which
exactly.
I know now is legal in most states, and it's not, like it's not. You should be doing it every day. You know what I mean? And so, I've seen that, but also it's like anything with medication, right? Like the minute you take medication, it has a chemical impact on your body. So if you're taking other medication or you have other things going on, like my son has been on 4 different medications throughout his life because as he's gone through puberty, as he's changed, his body changed. Those medications didn't work anymore. They made him feel a certain way, right? I mean, I've had some kids that I know were on medication for ADHD and actually caused them depression. And they had to, like, it's like anything, it's trial and error. So if you want them to be on the medication to work, sometimes you just have to try a few things. You gotta experiment. You gotta find the right cocktail that's gonna work. Like for years, my son had no appetite. But the difference is when he started school, he couldn't focus at all. He was failing. Couldn't keep up. As soon as we started medicating him and he was able to focus, he was his grades went from like high 60s, low 70s to high 80s, low 90s. Like within a month. So for him, it worked. But he gave up. He definitely went to school with a lunch bag, came home with lunch, got not hungry. Like it definitely has side effects. I think it's like anything in life. You have to choose, the benefit over the impact.
Mm. And quick question in regards of that experience that you had, because that's what I feel, and I'm going to tell you and I know that I move a little bit from that part, but you are talking about labels don't define us, and I agree 100%. When you are saying that, what I see, at least in your case, is like, okay, I am medicating my kid in some way, but I am working with his psychology also all the time. And I am working to, okay, maybe doctors are telling you that you have this, and this, but really, this is who I see you are. This is how I see you. And even the post that you put today, I was like, okay, this is impressive. This is good because you are talking about how you can connect with them and how you take out all the labels that people or doctors or whatever people that is around your kids are telling that they are, and you start to say like, I don't care what they say, I know what I say,
Yeah.
how that changes everything. Because I know, mess or not, it doesn't matter, but it matters a lot what do you say about your kid and how you say they are.
Well, I think too, just kind of going back to your original question. So, like with my son, I taught this kid from the beginning, and my wife, of course, like that. It's just something you have. It doesn't define you. You're gonna have an IEP. You're gonna be labeled in the school as a kid with a disability. But you need that label to get these accommodations, which are gonna help you be successful, right? So, like it's like the label gets you the medicine. The label gets you the accommodations you need to put you on an even playing field with your peers, right? That's really what it does. But it doesn't have to define you. And I always say that all these kids that are neurodivergent and have these various different labels, that's usually somewhere where their superpower lies. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
and that's what I always talk my kid to focus on. Like this is a kid who I always, in my mind, I don't say it to him, but in my mind, I'm like, oh God, is he going to do this? Right. Like you worry. He's never let me down. This kid has met every challenge put in front of him, every obstacle put in front of him. He's crushed. And that's because I believe that he never ever really cared. He's like, this is who I am. It's what I am. This is what I need to do. And he never let it bother him. So he never felt like he can't do anything. He never felt like there was a limitation on him because he never viewed it as a label. And I think kids that are neurodivergent and have some of these conditions, these labels, I think it's important as parents that we just, it's so important to tap into what makes them special. Okay, like one thing about kids with ADHD, and I mean any parent listening to this that has a kid with ADHD will understand this. If there's something they do like and they're super focused on it, they're amazing at it. Like my son plays drums, he's insane. Okay. Yes, for years when he was little, all he would talk about is drums. You couldn't get him to talk about anything else, right? Drums, blah, 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 blah. And yes, it's who he was. It was awkward to other kids. Some other kids didn't want to hang out with him because they felt, but guess what? He never cared. But now he's got this amazing group of friends. And, up at school, everybody wants his kid drum for them. I mean, he's like, so parents with kids with ADHD, you know this. You have your kid who's like super focused on this one thing. They're so good at it. So like their superpower sometimes is their ability to focus on something and be just so good at it because they latch onto it. I knew another kid who had autism. Okay, very high functioning, but he was definitely had autism. You can ask this kid anywhere in the country how to get there, and he could tell you what parkway, what exit to get. I mean, he studied maps. He memorized maps. Anywhere
Wow.
in the country, you can ask him anywhere in the country. Like nobody can do that. So some of these kids that are neurodivergent, they can access parts of the brain that we can't, and they can do some amazing things. And I think it's focusing on their superpowers and that, and you know, letting them understand what their superpower is. So that's what they define themselves by, not by the label that goes along with their disability.
And I love that, Keith. And I want to share with you something that I am going through right now. I have two little kids. One is 2 years, and the other one is 4 years old. He started school, the old one, the 4 years. He started school last August, and because of this COVID and everything, he needed to go to school with this mask. So that's right now. Only when he was at school, he's using the mask. If he's in any other place, he's not using any mask. But after a couple of months, we realized that he was, well, not realized at that moment, but we continued checking that what was happening with him is every time that he entered the school, he stopped talking. He didn't want to talk anything. And suddenly we were like, okay, what is happening? We started to talk even with his teacher and some psychologist that was part of the school just to understand what was happening. And at the end, he decided not to talk because he didn't like the mask. And as simple as that, he didn't want to speak because he had that. And we even went a couple of times with him entering the school and entering everything. And the moment that he passes the door, he stopped talking. And if he is going to talk something to you, he starts to be like, and you don't understand anything because he had the mask and he is talking like whispering.
Right.
So for us with my wife was something very challenging to see and to try to help him and understand how to not to label him that it's that's why for me this topic is very very emotional. But something that we started to do in conjunction with the teacher and the psychologist and my wife is it's normal. Okay, we are not going to define you that because you are doing that. And what we started to do is we pray all nights with them. And when we were praying, we were starting to tell what are the good things that we see about him. Like started to label them, but label with a okay, you are a leader, you are an amazing speaker, you are amazing this, amazing this, like talking like life to them. And a couple of months later he started to talk and he decided with his teacher like telling him the teacher, I'm going to start to speak with these five guys because I like them, and nobody was pushing them.
Right.
And he started to do that, and 2 weeks later, oh, I want to speak with 20 because five was too little. I want to speak with 20 normally. So what I'm trying to say with this, I agree again. When you start to label them, okay, this kid is going to be mute, he doesn't want to speak. No, you can start to speak life and start to say the good thing that you say that you see in him, and that starts to change everything in him.
Yeah. It's not. Thank you for sharing that. And, it's interesting. Like things have definitely changed, right? Like now in a lot of the schools, they have not every district, but a lot. They have these inclusion classes, right, where you have kids with special needs, right, labels, but there's a special ed teacher in the room to kind of help refocus them or help them, right? But they're integrated with kids that don't have a label. I remember like when I was in school, like I was bad at math. Like if I was in remedial math, I was in a room with a bunch of kids that were bad at math. So like we were all put in the, it's like you put in that box. Like okay, here's the kids that are bad at math. Here's the kids that are bad at science. Here's the kids that are bad at English. Right? Instead of incorporating us with everybody else, like that model didn't exist when
Mm.
I went to school as well. Right? So like we've definitely come a long way. Right? But the thing is, it's all how you look at the label. Like I truly try to believe, I understand the need for them because it does allow you to, okay, this is somebody who has this, we can treat this, and these are the things we could do to support them. Because the truth is, right, if you struggle with autism or ADD or ADHD or other labels, you're not playing on an even playing field with everybody else. So you have to even the playing field so everybody has an equal opportunity to be successful. And without that label, you can't identify who those kids are. But I just think we got to get in the mindset of, hey, understanding it's just a word. It means nothing. It's just something we use to get you the support you need. Other than that, it doesn't impact who you are. It doesn't have to impact who you are. And I think that's the important message for parents, because listen, a lot of kids struggle with this. A lot of kids I don't want anybody to know I have ADHD. I don't want anybody to know I have ADD. And I think we enable them when we support that narrative. I think it's more important to teach our kids it's okay to have it, and like don't be afraid to admit you have it, because your opportunity for success is going to be much better if you can just embrace it and just recognize that's a part of who you are. but it doesn't define you.
No, and even if you start to work, suddenly you start to see that, for example, you are an engineer or you are that manager that is doing some of the stuff. Suddenly, when you start to talk about yourself, you say, "Yeah, I am Alejandro. I am an MBA, and I have this, and I have this, and I have this." And suddenly, you are putting your own labels. Okay, and when you are presenting yourself, you are trying to give your pedigree, as I say,
Yeah.
instead of saying who I am really. Like, I am a person that loves to be talking about these topics, loves to open the heart of the people to understand that they are not defined by the thing that people is saying about them or even themselves, because that's another thing. I am talking about myself, and when I took out a lot of those stuff, like, okay, the MBA or the master degree in this, or all the or the amazing thing that I have reached in the past, suddenly I feel like alone, and I don't have anything to share, and I am nothing, and I start to feel like that, and it's like, no, that's not true. Why I am thinking that I am all these labels?
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny. We create labels too, even with like, I don't know how it is where you are, but like here in the States, right? Like just the education system and getting into college, right? We have standardized tests. I mean, I understand the need, but the truth is they were just people that are bad test takers. Again, I never, I'm not saying these things to brag because I'm definitely not one of those people that goes on social media and posts things about my kids. But like my daughter has terrible anxiety. She has generalized anxiety, right? And she's in law school right now. And when she was taking the LSAT, she's not a good test taker. She's really brilliant, but she's not a good test taker. And she wanted to get into this one particular school that has the best program, one of the best programs in the country for the type of law she wants to practice. And her scores just weren't high enough on the LSAT. And she wrote a letter to the school explaining to them like how important it is to go there. And they were moved by her letter and they've accepted her. And now she's president of the school. She just she just came in like second place in like some tournament that like with a score that like nobody ever got before. I mean, she's done amazing things at that school. If they would have based accepting her on a number that she scored, they would have missed out on having her. They wouldn't have had like she's thriving there. They would never have had that. So how many other students are not being given the opportunities? So it's not just labeling disabilities. We even like how we label students with standardized tests and how we. It's why I hope in this country they get rid of the standardized tests and they accept the whole student, like who you are, what makes you. There's I've seen kids get into top schools with 98 average and 1400 on the SAT or 1500 on the ACT, right? And then I've seen those same kids not get in, but somebody get in with a much lower. Like it makes no sense. So I think that's another thing. Just anytime we put a number or a label or a name or we define somebody by a score, we're not really learning about that person. We're looking at them superficially and be like, okay, they fit this box.
Mm, mm,
Like think about how many people we underestimating or are not getting their potential or the opportunity
mm.
because we put them in that box, right?
No, that's huge, and thank you for sharing that. And I agree 100%. That is exactly what is happening to a lot of people. So, in regards of next level, what are the things that you recommend to people, even for themselves, because this is also for business or for their kids, to do with this, how to avoid these labels, and how to manage that better?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can avoid it because it's just become a societal thing that we do. I think the important thing is like when you have a child who's got a label, right? Talk to them about it. How do you feel about it? Like ask them, like how do you feel knowing you have ADHD, and getting their feedback and then, based on what they're saying, steer them in the right direction, make them understand, hey, look, like it's just it means nothing. It really means nothing. It's like I said, that if because you now have this, I can get you this, which gives you the same opportunity as somebody that doesn't have this, right?
Mm,
Like always trying to link it to how um how because you have this label That's all this label means. It just gives you an opportunity to be able to access the same things that everybody else has access to, that sometimes can be a little more difficult for you. Other than that, it means nothing, and also talking to their strengths, being conscious of like what your kid's really good at and fostering that, supporting that, like if you got a kid that's really good at Legos, making Legos, like support it, let them do that, because if they're showing such a keen interest in that, that's somewhere where their strength lies, right? That's something that's going to be one of their strengths, right? You want to foster that strength, because if they can feel good about certain things about themselves, they'll start to not care so much about the few things that they don't feel good about. But if they don't feel good about anything about themselves, they're always going to see that as a label, and it's going to keep them down.
That's huge, and I
Yeah.
really love that, because really I have seen it even in my life and in everybody around me. Is like when you start to struggle a lot with something, a lot of the time it's because your superpower is behind that. So
Yeah.
uh, that is huge, and really when you are acting from your superpower, you're going to forget about the bad things that are happening around you, and that can change a lot.
And guess what? Other people are gonna notice. Other people are gonna be like, wow, like he's really good at this, or she's really good at that. Like it's just it's so much of it is about communication as parents, right? Like we love our kids so much, we want to protect them, we don't want to hurt them, right? Sometimes we don't want to have the conversation. And listen, a lot of times I've seen this too with families I work with, where like mom or dad is like all on board, understands what's going on, right? But the other parent's in denial.
Mm.
Yeah, they don't have this, they don't have, no, they do. Like the doctor said, they don't. It's just a whole, and it's like that's not good either, because what message are you sending to your kid, who you keep saying to your kid, no, there's nothing wrong, no, there's nothing wrong, no, there's nothing wrong, and your kid keeps struggling at the same thing. After a while, that's going to be like, something's wrong with me, I'm broken, right? But
Mm.
if you say, look, you know what, this is harder for you, and this is why it's harder for you, doesn't mean you can't do these things. It just means we need to do these things to help you better do these things. That's all it means. But at least if there's an understanding, your kid's going to grow up understanding that. If you're in denial about it, and you keep
Mm.
telling your kid nothing's wrong, and they can't seem to find success, that's
Mm.
just going to keep eating at their self-esteem, and then they're going to start to think something's really wrong, right?
And that's, remember in the story that I told you about my son, exactly one of the things that we also did was, because he was whispering when he was at school, and then he started to do the same thing when he was in other places that he didn't know. So we started to talk like, okay, there are three different type of voice that you can have, and there is the whispering one, the normal one, and the screaming one. Which one are you using right now? Do you know that when you are using the whispering, nobody understand? It's okay if you can use it, but nobody can understand you.
Right.
So if you move to the normal one, I can understand you better. So suddenly for him was very natural, like, okay, yeah, I know I'm using the whispering and nobody understand me. So when he wanted to be like communicating with others, he's like, okay, the whispering one is not helping me. I need to use the other one. So because for us was like natural and normal, and we didn't say like you don't have that problem. We started to see it from a different perspective, like, okay, it's okay, you are trying to whisper and that's fine, but try to whisper with a mask in your mouth and you're not going to understand anything.
Right.
Try to do it. And that's again what you are saying right now. Don't say that it doesn't exist, just try to see it from a different perspective. Instead of looking at that as a problem, you can look at that as an opportunity to teach another thing.
And sometimes through questions, ask them questions. Like listen, the best is when you watch the light bulb go off because they figure it out for themselves,
Mm.
right? So asking them questions, like pointed questions, because you want them to think and you want them to answer the question. But sometimes when you ask the right questions, they will come to a realization on their own. And when they do, that way, it's like you see it, the eyes light up, and they're like, right, I get it. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing too. Just as parents, right? Like my kids know, if they ever say to me, "What do you think of this?" They know never to ask me a question like that, because they know my answer is always going to be, "Well, what do you think?" You know, but I'm asking you, and I'm like, but I want to hear what you tell me what you think, and then I'll tell you what I think, because I think what I think is what you're gonna think, but you just don't know it yet. And
Mm,
like 9 out of 10 times, they're like, I'm like, yeah, see, that's exactly what I would have done. You know, you didn't need me.
mm. No, that was huge, Keith. Thank you very much for today and having this amazing conversation.
I
I
appreciate
hope that everybody here that was listening was getting a lot of value. This was for me very, very insightful. So thank you again, Keith. This was amazing. Do you want to leave people with how they can connect with you, and what is the last, if they forget about any and everything that we talk, what is one phrase or one thing that you want to tell them?
it. Well, if you want to get in touch with me for my personal business, my website is shiftyourpower.com, and I can be reached at keith@shiftyourpower.com. If you're looking to get involved with our non-for-profit, which supports youth mental health, it's all programming towards supporting social emotional learning and teaching character development to teens cross country. It's the Sofia Valsamos Foundation. It's tsvf.org, and I can be reached at keith@tsvf.org. And I mean, to leave people with something, I just, my purpose. I think I might have said this on the last meeting. Like, this is my third career transition. I was in the hotel business for years. I was a caterer for almost 20 years. So this, this is my life's purpose now. Like, I wanted to be a child psychologist, and I never got to be, because my parents were great, but they were like, "You're really good with people. It's going to be really hard to go back to school and get a master's and a PhD and blah blah." So I never did it, right? But the truth is, everything comes full circle. Like, my purpose is changing the world through our youth, right? Because we need them to learn from our mistakes and do better and make this world better. And the only way we do it is if we give them the tools and the social emotional learning to be able to be more empathetic and kind and caring and understanding of others. And if we could do that, we have a chance of, changing the world for the better. So
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Keith. It was amazing. Thank you, everyone that was listening to us, and we are looking forward to connecting again. So thank you and
thanks
everything.
for having me. I appreciate it.
It was great.
Bye, everybody.